So, Claire, what do you hope that your readers take away from the book?
What I'm hoping for is flowers are obviously a lovely gift to give and to receive, and I think rather than just the random act of giving flowers, people will understand that that there can be a much greater depth of meaning to even something as simple as a bunch of snowdrops. It's not just a bunch of snowdrops. It's the messages of hope and consolation and the history that they have behind them.
If you're thinking of starting a small business or you're thinking of writing a book, then I'm sure you'll really enjoy my interview this week with Claire Bowen from Honeysuckle and Hilda. Claire is a florist, a teacher, and a writer, but she's also now an author of a beautiful new book, and we'll be talking about it in this week's podcast. A very warm welcome, Claire, to my podcast.
Thank you, Rona, for having me. I'm very excited to be on your podcast.
I'm so excited. I'm actually very excited just to see you because we haven't seen each other for so long. I think the last time
I know.
was at that amazing flower festival, wasn't it?
Yes, I think it was. Yes, it's been quite a while. Yes,
Yeah,
it doesn't seem that long, but it has been a long time. But just the days merge into one, I think, at the moment.
Absolutely. But you've been very busy while the days have been merging into one by writing a
book. I have, yes.
Before we talk about that, which is so exciting, could you share with the listeners your small business journey, please?
Okay, so my small business journey wasn't at all conventional. It's something that I always dreamt of, but I didn't think it would ever happen. And it almost happened by accident. I originally, a long time ago, I wanted to be a lawyer, and I read Greek and Latin, and I then decided, no, I wanted to be an art historian, and I did a few more degrees, and I used to lecture in art history a long time ago. And then things changed, and I got a sort of more conventional job in marketing, the sort of kind of job that paid the bills, and but for me, it wasn't the job of my dreams. It was a means to an end. And I absolutely love flowers, and I also love writing. And so in my early 30s, I left Battersea and I moved to Hackney at a time when not that many people would have thought to make the move. It's a very different place now, but I wanted to be near Columbia Road Flower Market. That was my aim. And I used to go to flower classes at McQueen's when they were in Victoria Park Village, which was a really long time ago. And I did classes at Rebel had just opened when I moved to Hackney, and I was doing classes there. And I was sort of buying flowers at the weekend, but it was something for me. I couldn't have imagined how I would make that into an occupation. And I also went to the London School of Journalism and did some creative writing classes because I loved writing. But I didn't think it would ever happen. I read blogs. I think the thing that really swung it for me was Miss Pickering's blog. And she really inspired me a lot, actually. But again, it was only when I had to give up work. I don't know how many people know this. It's something I talk about because I hope it inspires other people, but I don't want to talk about it so much that people think I feel sorry for myself, because I absolutely don't. It's one of those things, and it's brought about some really amazing changes in my life, but I was very poorly. And when I was waiting for a prognosis, I had to face up to the reality that I hadn't been doing the things I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, that's really annoying. I could have done all those things and I never did them. And I sort of promised myself if I got better that I would do them. And so I was off work for a few years. And unsurprisingly, when I went back, they made me redundant because someone else had been doing my job for 3.5 years, which wasn't a big surprise. But with the payoff that I got, I invested that in flower classes. I thought, right, I'm really going to try and just see if I can do this. So it probably may have looked strange on Instagram. Suddenly there's a person doing, going, oh, I'm going here, I'm going there, now I'm going to do this. But I was kind of like, I was so alive again, and normal conventional me would have put that money in the bank for a rainy day, but I didn't do that. I just went, let's do this. And I did some classes. I didn't know if it was going to lead anywhere, but in some ways I saw it as part of my recovery, I suppose. And then people started writing to me on Instagram and asking me, did I do weddings and did I teach? And I was like, don't be silly, why would I do that? And then more people started to write to me, and I thought, well, okay. And then my husband said to me, just have a class in the kitchen, see who comes, see if you like it. And so I did that, and lovely Jen Pinder came along to give me some feedback afterwards and say, yeah, I think you can do it, or no, you can't, or these are, so she came along, which was massively helpful. And then I thought, okay, maybe. And then, as you know, I came on your class with Fiona to talk about branding, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did know that I wanted it to be sustainable and environmentally friendly. Because of the nature of my illness and the fact that it was put down quite specifically to environmental factors and air pollution, I had done, which is the reason I left London, and I had done a lot of campaigning against pesticides, and I was assisting a lady called Catherine Hamlet, who's a fashion designer, and we had been walking our dogs together. I didn't know that she was Catherine Hamlet. And then when Hackney Council started using pesticides on the pavement and actually on the parks, and dogs started dying because of them, so she started a campaign, and I ran her 38 Degrees campaign for her, and we went to government to we met with Zach Goldsmith and with Caroline Lucas, and the Pesticide Action Network came with us to try and see if we could find a way forward and how to stop councils effectively doing this. So I already had that sort of environmental mindset before I started the flowers. And so to me, at a time when Oasis was more widely used, and thankfully it is now, to me, I was already sort of looking into these things because I'd been told I had to avoid so many chemicals. So it was natural for me. If I hadn't been ill, I probably wouldn't have thought about it at that time. But because those things had happened, I came into it from that angle. So when I came to your class, I knew the thing that I really wanted was to be sustainable and not much beyond that, I suppose. And so I guess after that, I started renting village halls and teaching classes there, and lots of lovely people who are now great friends now. The sort of the people who come to the first ones, and I'm still in touch with them, and they're all people that you would know on Instagram. And they were sort of lovely and supportive. And then we bought a house. We had been looking for a while because we had to leave London because of the air. And we found one with an outbuilding that was a slightly rundown garage and workshop and a garden. And so we set about turning that into a studio. And at the same time, Dalesford dropped me an email and said, would I like to teach there as a guest florist? And obviously that for me, I love Dalesford, I'm terrible. And for me, that was the dream. I was like, oh my goodness, I've been asked to teach at Dalesford. I was very excited about that. And that kind of builds up, and then you get customers who come back to you. And so I think I realized I did weddings as well, but I think I realized then that my great joy was teaching, actually. So I'm sort of at a stage now where, of course, the book, and then the book happened. That'd be good to talk about that. And then the book. And then I think a lot of it, so much of it is luck, because Dalesford happened to find me. I mean, you have to make your own luck a little bit. You have to put yourself out there in the first place. But Dalesford getting in touch for me was a great thing. And then when I got an email from Penguin Random House, sort of out of the blue, I suppose, it just came in as an inquiry on my website saying, would you like to write a book? So
as it happens,
and I looked
day,
at it,
sure.
yeah, and I was looking at it, and after all these years of thinking, how will I ever write a book, I got this email saying, would you like to write a book? Which is kind of turning it on its head. I had the vision of writing a book and having to go to publishers and, you know, pitching it. And they then came to me with an idea. So, so that's been so it's all kind of, it's sort of had quite unusual beginnings, but it's starting to fall into place, I suppose. And so I'm hopeful that once the pandemic is over, I will be writing and teaching and at Daylesford and at home. And yeah, I've been, so in some ways I've been very lucky, unlucky in other ways, but very lucky in some. So
I
I
think you've
think
got an
it's
amazing brand though, which is helped by your two beautiful dogs. So your
oh,
company's Honeysuckle and Hilda, and that's the name of your
Hilda.
two dogs.
Yeah, so Hilda, I got as sort of part of when I was poorly, I knew I needed to get up and get out. And so I decided I wanted a puppy, and then I got Hilda. And we spent a lot of time out walking and going to Hackney Marshes and looking at nature. And I got involved in, again, some campaigning against development in Hackney Marshes that was quite destructive to nature. And it's something that I care about. So again, that was a part of another environmental sort of strand coming through. And yes, so Hilda was sort of with us from the beginning, and Honeysuckle was, the name Honeysuckle began with an H, and it scanned quite well with Hilda. I thought about hellebores and Hilda, but I went for Honeysuckle and Hilda. And then when we adopted a rescue dog 2 years ago, she had no choice but to be called Honeysuckle. So it's the only way it was going to work. And it turns out she's very photogenic, so that's good. So yes, so they're a big part of the team. So yeah, they're good. I'm lucky to have them.
So the book, you've always wanted to write a book.
Yes, yes. I didn't
Ah,
always know what about. Um, I was approached to write a book in my early 30s by a literary agent, but it was an expose of the business I was working in, and I didn't feel comfortable with that so much. But I knew I really wanted to write, and it was always in the back of my mind. And friends who used to get perhaps very long emails from me used to say, "Have you ever thought about writing properly?" And
well,
I
you can
thought
tell
maybe
from
they
your
would,
blog. Your blog is
maybe they would.
so beautifully written,
Oh,
so
thank
beautifully
you.
written.
Thank you. I never know, were people thinking she writes too much, maybe just put it in a book instead, or if they would, you know. So yes, it's been on my mind for a long time. So it's kind of like it's come out of the blue, but it was always also a long held dream. So yeah,
So the new book,
lucky.
your first book,
My
is
first
called
book. Yes.
The Healing Power of Flowers. So can you
Yes.
tell us about what happened after that initial email that you received from Penguin
So
Random House?
after the email, I we had a chat. They had a very specific idea in mind around the language of flowers. And I think my instinct was that the language of flowers has been written about by other people before, and very well. And so I didn't want to produce something that was just the same, sort of exactly the same kind of thing again. Um, because why? Because, you know, why would I? And also they wouldn't want that either. Penguin Random House wouldn't want that either. And so I spoke with my editor. My editor is so lovely, just like, oh, love her.
What are they called?
And the my
What's your,
editor, or
yeah. What's your editor called?
she's called Sam, and she is specifically Ebury Press, which is a really lovely imprint. So I was pretty excited about that. And so I said to her that yes, I'd love to work with her, but was there a way in which we could make the book sort of mine, I suppose, because she had been inspired by my blog. She found me just through one of those, somebody writes top 10 florists, you know, for something, and I was on one of those, and then she looked them up and found my blog. And I had written a blog about not having a big carbon footprint at Christmas, and sort of using independence and natural gifts and things like that. And she had seen that as a starting point. So I thought, could we put it together? And what we wanted was talking about crafting something out of flowers that you could give as a low impact gift. And at that point, the language of flowers comes in, because flowers have meaning. But on top of that, I wanted to add in other factors, I suppose. So I looked a little bit at aromatherapy and homeopathy, and sometimes just the energy that something can bring in the garden, because a lot of the flowers have quite negative meanings in Victorian times, for instance. So hellebores represent falsehood, and foxgloves are associated with lies. But with hellebores, I sort of saw them, they come out in the deep winter and they're really long lasting. And so I sort of translated that into longevity and constancy and applied it to friendships and relationships. And with foxgloves, you know, they're sort of tall and proud and they've got all the bees buzzing around. And so I sort of saw them as like a positive energy if someone was going to go and start a new job, or, you know, so the book is arranged in terms of flowers that you give for a specific event. I'm just going to look down and tell you what they are. They are joy, calm, love, success, constellation, and also celebration. And so we would take books. It's within those sections. I've made sure that all the flowers are arranged seasonally so that people know that when they're available. So I talk a little bit why each flower would fit that category. And sometimes if it crosses two categories, I'll mention that as well. So it was actually quite a challenge to be given the topic. The headings were given to me, and then I had to find the flowers to fit them. But obviously I didn't want to shoehorn anything in. It had to be, I wanted it to be natural. I didn't want to take a flower and go, right, it must go in that category. How can I make it do that? So a lot of the book was thinking about where those things were going, and a lot of the editing process was deciding, and then I'd write it up for one section, then we'd think actually might be better in that section, and then we'd adjust it slightly, but in a sort of natural way, so that we weren't forcing anything. But it was a lot of the book's process was the thinking about what would go where. And then as we went on, I was asked if I could maybe think about bouquets that people could craft quite easily. So it's not sort of something with like 55 ingredients that you would take down the aisle, you know, that's going to take 3 hours. It's literally, they said to me, if somebody had 4 or 5 ingredients, you know, and so I sort of do a little bit of explanation about different types of flowers and how you would put them together. But then I've done sort of bouquets for new parents, one for constellation, and one for everlasting friendship, using dried flowers for the winter. And it's sort of, so it's almost like sort of flower recipes. And again, trying to do it so that the flowers were available at the same time, but also a message that was natural. That was another challenge. And of course, all of this during lockdown, when I had to shield because of my lungs, so I wasn't supposed to go out at all. So I was very reliant on local growers. So I'm very close to Green and Gorgeous. I'm a mile away, and they were immensely, I mean, what a wonderful place to end up living. Yeah. And so they were, Rachel and Ash were immensely helpful, helping with flowers, and also the land gardeners helped me. And I went up there, and they just made sure that they, you know, they sort of kept away, and I got to, you know, take my buckets and go and pick there. Esme helped as well. So people were, but I would like to have included more florists than I did. But in a lockdown, it's a very difficult, very, very difficult scenario. And also because I wanted everything to be seasonal, and we were shooting between March and August, some of the flowers had to be dried, and that was how we got around it. So I think there were 80 flowers. There are only like 3 or 4 that don't have photographs. Yeah. And the rest of them are either fresh or dried, to make sure. So nothing in the book was imported or bought from anywhere where I couldn't trace its provenance, because that was sort of the message of the book. So I wanted to make sure that I practiced what I preached.
Now we touched on photographs there, and
yes.
Ava Nemeth, the incredible photographer. Can you tell me how you met Ava and how she came to be involved in the book?
So I met Ava in, I don't think my husband will mind me telling the story. I'm sure he would. When I first moved to a village not far from here, and Charles would, we would both go out walking with Hilda, but he would go on quite long walks with her. And I followed Ava because she'd taken some beautiful photographs of Green and Gorgeous. So we followed each other. And she sent me a note saying, this is going to sound very strange, but I think think I keep seeing your dog. Think I keep seeing Hilda going for a walk near this farm, but she's with, but it's not in London, and she's with a man. And I wrote back and I said, is the man in his mid-50s and quite scruffy? And she said, yes. I said, well, that's my husband. And she said, we'd love to meet for a cup of tea. So we met for a cup of tea and we got on really well. She is one of the kindest people you could ever hope to meet. And she was sort of she's so busy now. She's like, oh, wow. And it was a few years ago. We were both at slightly earlier stages. But we became friends, and when I did one of my classes at Village Hall, I invited her to do a photography slot in the afternoon to make it a full day, and she took some photos for me. And we live 20 minutes away, so we meet up for tea, and she's amazing at baking. She bakes some amazing cakes, and tea and cake and things like that. And then when I got the email from Sam about the book, and it said, you need to be comfortable with your own photography or know a photographer you would work with. And I sort of stipulated straight away, it really needed to be Ava. And her style suits mine really well as well. I think we sort of suit each other in that sense. And so they said that's fine. And I really would like her to be, a big part of a book, not just a photographer in the traditional sense, because we will work together. And it was so nice to have somebody to work with, because there were times during the pandemic when things go wrong and there aren't flowers, and to have someone to do the problem solving with was amazing. And I'm so glad that she agreed to do it with me, because it would not have been the same book without her, for sure.
It's amazing, beautiful photographs that she's taken. Let's go back to the actual structure of the book. So you've got what made you have healing as the overall arching theme of the messages that the flowers give?
It was partly driven by the publishers, but actually it fitted quite well, in the sense that a lot of the flowers have healing properties, not just in the sense of aromatherapy, or some of them have a very literal healing one, but some of them have sort of emotional healing powers. So a lot of the flowers around constellation, like marigolds and snowdrops and things like that, were traditionally given when somebody was grieving. So they have a healing property in that sense. So I suppose it was the adjective that sort of pulled together all of the properties that we were trying to cover. So it's not only physical healing properties, which I think, actually, I'm glad you said that, because that's quite an important point. It's about emotionally how they affect people as well.
Absolutely, and don't we all need a lot of that at the moment?
I know. Yes.
Through. So there's all the sections about joy, calm, love, success, consolation and celebration. And then you talk about foliage as well, and then you go on to your bouquets to share, and then there are 3 more sections, aren't there, about pressing, drying and sourcing your flowers. So why did you add pressing, drying and sourcing to the book?
So the pressing and drying, once we sort of started going down the book grew a lot as it went along. I think it was originally intended to be a bit shorter than it was. And I think perhaps, unfortunately for the publishers, they set the price before they realised, before they then said, oh, we'd really like to add these things, and all the extra pages go in, because obviously colour books cost a lot of money to produce. But after we talked about the bouquets, I think, I'm not sure, the request came from them. I know at the time, Bex at Botanical Tales, he does amazing things, and she was inspiring me a lot. And I had been doing some setups in my studio, trying out some of her drying practice. I love drying flowers anyway, and it's literally just it's nothing like the depth that she goes into, but it was just, again, it's a way of gifting. It's something creative to do. It's the way of gifting that's low impact. It's a way of giving flowers out of season as well, so that a bit like Valentine's Day is in February, so what kind of seasonal flowers can you find then, or if you want to give someone a present in January, what do you do? So the flowers that have been dried over the summer are perfect for using in the winter. So the pressed flowers and the dried flowers sort of fitted in with the gifting aspect of the book. The sourcing was my request. I was very keen to talk about where to source one's flowers. I think having arranged the book seasonally, it meant, and telling people that that ideally this is what they should be aiming to do, it made sense to give them some pointers about how to go about it, and also where to source those things. So I've talked a little bit about florists and markets and the right questions to ask, and also you can buy flowers in supermarkets. They're not always wrapped in plastic from abroad. More and more, like Sainsbury's have committed to only wrapping flowers in paper now, which is amazing. And a lot of them are seasonal if you sort of look for the right things. So I didn't want to say don't do this and don't do that. I wanted to encourage to sort of go to the right places. And also I would love to have listed all my favorite flower farms, but we couldn't decide how to fit everybody in. So in the end, we listed the stockists that I'd used for supplying flowers and ceramics, and a few of the props and things like that. But then we sort of used the umbrella terms of Flowers from the Farm and the British Flower Collective. And also because the book will be in the US in a few months' time, the publisher out there has bulk bought the rights to, I think, the first 5,000 over there, with the possibility of more, hopefully, if it sells well. And so we've included directories for the US and Canada, and globally and obviously we mentioned people like Florist, just so that people who perhaps aren't in our Instagram sphere, I think the point of the book is not just to appeal to florists, but to appeal to people from a broader base as well. So I hope it will still be, I hope it will still be useful to florists, particularly if you want to know the meaning of, a property of a flower, or you're stuck for something to say on Instagram, it's all there. But what I was really hoping with the book, because of the way it's being marketed and sold in so many places I would never have thought of or had access to, I'm hoping it's going to go to a broader base and be part of a bigger movement of explaining to people about flowers. So the same way say chefs explain to people about seasonal produce and farming and sustainability, I would hope that it's going to go out to a wider audience as well. And so it seemed right to point them in the right direction and to explain the best ways that they could go about doing this. I'm hoping it's not too bossy. I don't think it's too bossy, but
it doesn't come
it's something I'm very passionate about. So I'm hoping it's just sort of setting people on that path.
Have you got a copy in front of you?
I have, yes.
Can you just show it to people? Because I haven't got one. I've only got the PDF right.
Oh no, you haven't got it should be with you very soon. So this is the copy.
Beautiful cover, very distinctive green.
Yes, we were quite surprised to be asked about the green, but once it arrived, we loved it. But it was like bright green. Are you sure?
So
I won't mind me saying that. Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about how you researched the book and what kind of writing software you use and your process, because you say you love writing. So how did you have a spot that you used to always go and sit in to write, or tell us about your actual writing process? So people who are thinking about writing a book. My
writing process, I did a lot of it. I had coronavirus early on, in sort of around about February, and we both did, and it hit us very hard. So I was quite tired, and I did quite a lot of the writing in bed. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it's true.
You go ahead.
And
on a computer,
and also
on a laptop?
Oh yes, on a laptop, absolutely. Okay. And I had probably about 20 or 30 books as reference points, and I did a lot of research on the internet. It was frustrating that I couldn't go to libraries and find older books. So sort of when I was doing my degree, I was so used to sitting in the library in a corner. and I loved that process. But this time around was unusual. They were very unusual circumstances. I couldn't go out and do that. I do also have I nearly today had my pink flowery wallpaper behind me, and I thought that you might not be ready the world might not be ready for my pink flowery wallpaper for a podcast. But I have a little spot with an old wrought iron table and chair, and I sort of hole up there, and I have another my bookshelves there. So I did quite a lot there as I got better. I did it very traditionally. I didn't use a software package because I had lovely editors and copy editors and typesetters. The big advantage of working with somebody like Ebury is that they had so many people to help with so many things. So I literally did it in Word.
Okay.
And I would research 10 flowers at a time, send them across. They would have a look, decide whether they liked the tone of the writing and, any pointers. And then I'd do another 10. And then they were like, and then with a bit of backwards and forwards, they're like, well, you know what we're looking for now. And then I sort of went away and did the other 60 on my own. And then the editor, Sam, went through it and then came back to me. And then, because I thought my deadline was July, and I thought, middle of July, I submitted it the day before my birthday. I thought, hooray, it's done. And of course, it's nothing like done. And so, then Sam came back to me. So then I wrote things, and then it went to the copy editor. And the copy editor was someone who'd edited other books in the subject, and they fact check it. And they ask lots of questions. And if there are things that they think aren't clear to readers, they will say, you need to explain this, or this doesn't join with that. And so then I would put those things in, and then it would go back to the editor, and she might not agree with everything that I or the copy editor thought. So then we'd have another discussion. But eventually we pull it together. So there are so many processes. It's been really interesting way to learn about publishing and to know for future, if I did write another book, all the processes that are involved. But I was lucky, and everybody I worked with has been absolutely charming. And they apart from telling us about the color schemes for the color palette for the book. So my studio, for better or worse, is quite pink. And so we used some of it was pink, and then some of Ava has some backgrounds of sort of grey and cream. And then they introduced this bright green that they really liked, which I concede does work really well. And so Ava had sort of within, they were like, we would like flat lays or uprights, but they sort of gave us some parameters, but also Ava had, some leeway as well. And they were very receptive to suggestions as well. So Ava's obviously very creative and she absolutely has an amazing eye for something, and she was like, well, I think it should be this way. So yeah, there were so many processes that go into a book. I had no idea. They've been amazing. It's been a great way to spend a year. But yes, yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. So
It's okay.
Just knocked my microphone there.
Huh?
So it took you you started it last March, is that right?
Yeah, the discussions.
July.
It took till July for the original. There were a couple of months of discussion about what it should be about. So when I started in March, we'd spent 2 months talking about the language of flowers, versus sustainability, and how it would have to be to work for both of us. So we agreed all that before I signed a contract. So it was a few months work pre-contract, and then started in March, and finished the copy in July and the photography towards the end of August.
Okay.
To give us some more time to shoot flowers that were coming in. So for instance, we wanted dahlias, so we were desperately hoping that dahlias would come out, because the printing, because the book is printed sustainably, and then it's not flown back, it's shipped back, and that takes a long time. And so you have to allow extra time for all of these things. It takes longer to produce a book in a more sustainable way. So that's why the deadline was quicker, because they wanted this book to come out in advance of Mother's Day. That was how that was to make it commercial for them, and how were they going to sell the book. So they saw it as something that would be a lovely Mother's Day present. So in March last year, I knew that they wanted 4th of March as the publication date. That was always there. And then you sort of set deadlines working backwards from that for everything.
Right. So this podcast is going to go live the day before Mother's Day. It's going to go live on March the 13th. So people will be able to rush out to the store.
Oh, great.
Or even order online with a reputable online company.
Yes.
Get it delivered the next day.
So what wonderful timing.
Yeah.
Well, happy Mother's Day to everybody who's watching this.
Or listening. So Claire, what do you hope that your readers take away from the book?
What I'm hoping for is flowers are obviously a lovely gift to give and to receive, and I think rather than just the random act of giving flowers, people will understand that that there can be a much greater depth of meaning to even something as simple as a bunch of snowdrops. It's not just a bunch of snowdrops, it's the messages of hope and consolation and the history that they have behind them. And so, or bringing together lots of different flowers, lots of different layers of meaning, and the thoughtfulness that can go into that, rather than just quickly grabbing something off a stall and going, here's the flowers for mum. They can really sort of look at it and think about the message that they want to put across, and then see the flowers that are available to them and sort of choose accordingly to sort of, and then it's it's sort of the difference between maybe preparing a meal for somebody from scratch because you thought really hard about the ingredients and the ingredients that they like. Again, it's that kind of thing. It's not just quickly grabbing something off the shelf. It's buying all the ingredients and putting it together yourself, I suppose, to be an analogy that might work.
It's an amazing analogy. Amazing. I think you should make that an Instagram post.
Excellent. I thank you because I've got 10 days to go and I'm running out of things to say every morning, so I shall use that. Thank you, Rona. I shall use
You're welcome. And please, on one of your Instagram posts, can you put the description that you use for ranunculus, because it's so beautifully written, the way you describe them. So I've just gone all tingly just saying it when I read it at the weekend. I was like, oh, that's so lovely. So please make that an Instagram. An example of one of my descriptions that I use in the book.
Okay, I shall do that. Excellent.
So Thank you. What did you love most? You're welcome. What did you love most about writing the book, Claire?
What did I love most about it? I think the excitement of fulfilling something I'd always wanted to do. I am writing a book, and the fact that somebody had the confidence. I don't have a huge amount of confidence. I'm not in myself. So for somebody to come along and say, we trust you to do this, and then the book becoming a reality. I think this morning was one of the mornings when I put a post on Instagram and it said, 10 sleeps to go. And I thought, now I'm talking to Rona. Oh my goodness. It's actually happened. And it's one of those things, certainly 10 years ago when I was doing something that I wasn't, it wasn't fulfilling for me. The sort of, I suppose, the amount of time I spent wishing I could write a book, not necessarily about flowers, but just generally, and then the flowers coming into it, and just to sort of, the fact that I'm doing it, and it's going to be out there, and I enjoy writing, and I quite enjoyed people coming back to me with constructive criticism. Not everybody loves it, but I'm always quite interested to see what people have to say about my writing. And I said at the beginning to my editor, it's probably going to be quite wordy. She said it's easier for me to cut things out than it is for me to say, where is it? So we'll be fine. and so the same way I'm quite chatty, I'm quite wordy as well. And she was right. There was quite a lot of editing. And a couple of times I had to say, actually, no, that is important to me, and this is why it's important. And Sam was great at going, okay, if but equally I was good if she said, I don't think we need that. If I didn't feel strongly about it, I go, that's fine. if you think we don't need it, then we don't need it. So I found the process of it, the editing and the feedback, really useful, because hopefully when I start writing something else, I have that experience behind me as well. So it's sort of a little bit like being paid to learn,
which is wonderful.
it's wonderful. Yes, yeah. So
why would
it's
you
been
say
good.
no to constructive feedback from such a well-known publisher as well?
I know. It's been. I think the whole way through the process, I've never thought, I've never been. That's a double negative. I was going to say I've never not been aware. I've always been aware of how lucky I am to be doing it.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to someone who is considering writing a book, Claire?
Writing a book.
What advice would you give them?
What advice would I give them? I think in my case, it was different because I was approached to write it, which was a bolt from the blue and extremely lucky.
But you make your own luck, Claire. You were the person writing those blog posts.
I think that's good. I think that's a good advice. Would be to as you say, I wrote a blog and I haven't written on it for almost 11 months because I've been writing the book. I've been writing something else, but before that I did try and put examples of writing out there, and a lot of the time I was doing it because I enjoyed it. But of course there's always the hope, if publishers are looking for somebody, or if you're approaching publishers, it's always good for them to have a point of reference where they can see stuff that you've done before. So I think regular posting, which I haven't been brilliant at in the last few months because it's been wet and cold and pandemic like, but I think in normal times, sort of putting yourself out there, and also having a clear idea of what it is you want to do and what you can bring to the book, because that was something although Sam approached me to write the book, we then had to put something together for her to pitch to her team to get it approved. So it wasn't pre-approved by Ebury Press. It was an editor at Ebury saying, I've had an idea, I think you'd be great to write it. Can we do the proposal together to pitch you to do it and see if we can get it through? So it wasn't a done deal when she approached me. We had those few months of, formulating the book, and, and they wanted to know why I would be the right person. So you have to have an idea of why you should be the person to do it, even if it's terrifying.
Point, don't you?
Yeah. Because if I hadn't already been writing about sustainability, and if I hadn't been working with, for instance, Daylesford, it would have been harder for me to say I am the person who should be writing a book on sustainable gifts. So even though it's terrifying to put yourself forward, I know how scary I find it. And really I want to go, what, me, really, are you sure? You have to be able to go and say, you should choose me to write this because which is
I'm known for your environmental conversations that you have and how strongly you feel about them.
Yes. Yeah.
So 2021, hopefully we'll be coming out of this lovely pandemic.
Oh, fingers crossed.
What does 2021 have in store for Claire?
For Claire, well, I'm hoping more teaching. The hope is, if depending on when lockdown lifts, I think I'm allowed to say this, Daylesford are creating a lovely garden room at the moment. Wow. And they've asked me if I will go and do a book signing there, which would be wonderful, or an event, which would be a great way to in-person kickstart it, because obviously at the moment there's nothing happening online. And so some more teaching there, I would think, but largely my studio. In 2019 we had the whole process of building the studio, and then of course the first thing that happened was a pandemic, so not very much has happened in there. So I think my aim is to do more writing. I do have another book in mind. Wow. So I'm hoping somebody will look sympathetically on, but that's another discussion to be had. And so more writing and more teaching, and also we have taken on a garden now, which having lived in London for so long, it's about a third of an acre, but to me, it's, you know, it looks like a vast forest. So I'm, and it has its own little cutting garden. So I've got to get,
Wow.
I did a garden design class with the land gardeners last year, just before lockdown. And then we started replacing hedging and planting roses, but we didn't get to fulfill all the things we wanted to do. So I'm hoping a lot of gardening as well. So what I'd like to do, although I'm so blessed with green and gorgeous, I'd also like to be growing a lot of the sort of the twiddly bits that are hard to come by. So I'm hoping to do some more growing, but I'm very much not yet a grower. I see people on Instagram and think, wow, how did you do that? So I need to pull my socks up and get out there. I got lots of gardening tools for Christmas, I think was a hint from my husband. So I'm going to be out there. Oh yeah, no, I don't think it came with an offer of help. I think it came, but I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. He's a very kind man. But he was like, here's everything you asked for in your Milwaukee wish list. Go forth and go forth and garden. So and the dogs will love that. So yeah.
So you mentioned teaching. What kind of courses or workshops do you think you'll be running? What can people learn from you?
What can people learn from me? Traditionally, the three that I've done are sort of bouquets and arrangements and wreath workshops. I think I particularly enjoy the arrangements. I think they're my favourites.
Why is that? What do you think?
I don't know. I think with bouquets, when I found when you teach bouquets, it takes me quite a long time to make one, but sometimes people can make them quite quickly, and it's not quite the same process. I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. It's an amazing thing to do, and I love teaching it. But I think the arrangement thing, I think maybe I love arrangements the most. I'm going to put that out there and say that.
Don't you?
Yeah, I have a quite.
You're a bit of a container-holic.
Yes, it has. This has been pointed out to me. The studio is full of containers, and I'm always thinking about what's the next vase going to be. And I do absolutely love bouquets as well, and wreaths. I love teaching autumn wreaths and Christmas wreaths, and I do quite a lot of one-to-one. Seem to be the things that I have the most of, which I really enjoy because it gives you the day to get to know somebody, and you can tailor it around things that they're hoping to learn.
And if somebody hasn't seen your work before, Claire, how would you describe your floristry style?
The floristry style, it's quite wild, quite loose. It's not, if you want to learn to make a very neat and contained bouquet or arrangement, I'm probably not the right person for you, because it's quite asymmetrical. It's very naturalistic. I sort of like to be inspired by the garden and the shapes that come out of a garden, and sort of translating that into a bouquet or an arrangement. And obviously, lots of people have lots of questions about sustainability or about Instagram. I get asked lots of questions about Instagram, which are actually not as easy to answer as they used to be, because Instagram's changed quite a lot. So sort of the general chat, people come with all sorts of questions, which I really love, and I love talking, luckily. So it's something I really enjoy doing. So I hope I get to do more of both. I don't do big classes anyway, because I like to make sure everyone has enough attention. So I wouldn't really take on more than 4 or 5 in the studio, maybe 6 at Dalesford because they've got more space. But I don't do big classes in that sense.
Won't it be so lovely to have social interaction in person?
I know, it'll be so nice. I did teach one class during when lockdown was lifted, and I had about a month where I wasn't supposed to be shielding. The thing that was difficult, apart from the fact it was pouring with rain that day, the thing that was difficult was that I couldn't go over, and people were doing bouquets, and I wanted to sort of go and point to things or take flowers over or just tweak things a little bit that would make such a difference. And so then you're trying to explain to people from 2 or 3 meters away, no, not that bit, and it wasn't the same experience, actually.
But
So
hopefully when lockdown is over,
yes,
then
and you
we'll
can
all
just
have
go
been
up to people.
immunized. Yeah,
I know
yeah,
it will be,
hopefully.
hopefully. Yeah, well, they seem to be getting through it, the immunizations pretty quickly. So
So I
fingers
think we'll
crossed this summer.
appreciate everything so much more, won't we? Once
Yeah, I
we're back
think.
to a different kind of normal, but
Yeah,
a new normal.
yeah, a new normal, but I think one will be incredibly grateful for.
So where can people buy your book, Claire, in the UK?
Well, I think in sort of lots of sort of conventional places, it's on lots of online bookstores. I know it's on Waterstones and Blackwell's, and my favorite at the moment is bookshop.org because they support independent bookstores while they're closed, which is wonderful. And um, I know there were talks about big. I'm not absolutely sure on all of them, but there were some sort of bigger stores outside of bookshops that were being approached. Um, Certainly, it's obviously going to be at Dalesford. I think, I think sort of hopefully the normal places where you would go to buy a book, because it's Ebury Press, and I think they have quite a far reach. So um, online, certainly, it should be very easy to get hold of.
Brilliant. And you
And in
mentioned,
bookshops, if
go on.
and in bookshops when they're open.
Yes. Soon, hopefully.
Soon, yes, soon.
You mentioned the US as well. When do you think the book's going to be available in the US?
I think that's a few months away. Um, I heard about that before Christmas, and they said it was, I think, maybe 3 months. I would need to check with the publisher, but certainly in the summer. I think they said later in the summer, which was, as specific as they could be at the time. But certainly the publisher's taken on the rights to do that over there, which is really exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a book tour. I'm joking, but that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I just need
imagine
to go
that.
to the States.
Yeah, well, to be honest, if I escape the village, it would be. I love my village, but I've seen a lot of it recently, and they of me. So, yeah.
So where can people find out more about you and your business, Claire?
I think on my you see, every time you ask me a question, I think, oh, that's something else I should do. I would say on my website, which is honeysuckleandhilda.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to spend a few days, I think, between now and publication, adding some new photographs, because everything we photographed last year was for the book. I haven't been allowed to share all of that, so because obviously it's specific to the book. So, but yes, doing some writing. I've got some writing in mind for that. But everything is on there, and I've got some lovely photos of the studio that should really be going up there as well. So yes, that's the best place to look, I think, at the moment.
And Instagram?
And Instagram, yes, thank you, Rhoda. Instagram, I'm at Honeysuckle and Hilda on Instagram, and I'll be doing, now that I've sort of got this project done, and it's time for some flowers, and I've got all the tulips growing in my garden. Hooray! I planted them optimistically, thinking I would be teaching in sort of March, April. And last year I did the same thing, but it didn't matter because we had the book. So there's one picture in the book which has about 200 or 300 tulips in it, because we didn't have it.
On your table.
On the table,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I couldn't even, because I had coronavirus, I couldn't even give them to people in the village. Because and we were the first people to get it, so we were like, everybody was incredibly kind with shopping and prescriptions and all of those things, but they sort of had a cross on our door, so I couldn't say to people, do come and take some tulips, to say thank you. I just couldn't do that, because in case we didn't know at that stage exactly how the virus was passed on. So yes, I'm going to have another 500 or 600 in the garden.
Where you'll have
in the
content
garden
for Instagram, won't
yes
you?
so much content hopefully coming this way. So that's going to be, I'm looking forward to getting back into the swing of that a lot more than I have been. So I've got sort of 10 days of chatting about the book before publication, and then getting back into the, oh look, the flowers are here, and and lots of lovely arrangements and bouquets, and all of those things. It's
brilliant.
It's good. It's been a long winter, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you.
The longest winter.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's been so, so lovely catching up with you. And I found out things about you that I never knew. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm just so pleased for you that you had this dream
Mhm.
of writing a book and it's actually happened.
Mhm.
And just putting yourself out there on your blog and Instagram obviously has reaped lots of benefits, hasn't it?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yes, you're right. It's one of those things where if you sort of put yourself out there, maybe maybe you'll get lucky. I got lucky, I have to be honest. But if I hadn't put myself out there, I wouldn't have done. So it's a combination.
Thank you
But
so
thank you,
much.
Rona, so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And good
Thank you.
luck with the book launch here and in
Oh,
the States.
thank you. Thank you so much.
So I hope you enjoyed my interview with Claire. It was so lovely to see her again after so long and share her exciting news about her new book. Claire touched on some key points in the interview and she has kindly written them down for me, and I'll be including them. There are 3 practical tips that she'd like to share. So I'll be including them together with Ava, her photographer's photography tips, 3 of those, in a special download to accompany this week's episode. So I'll put a link so that you can download that below. So if you're looking for a beautiful book to buy someone who you know loves flowers and would like to know more about the meaning of flowers, I highly recommend getting a copy.